Today I'm talking with Sophie Allen, the co-founder of DailyBasis, a women's health brand developing nutrition supplementation tailored to the female cycle. With a background in food innovation, commercialization, and brand building, she's passionate about using business to advance women's health education and close the gender gap in products and research. I really had a great conversation with Sophie. We talk a lot about just why nutrition is so important, especially for women, and why the nutritional space is really lacking. There are some huge gaps in the nutritional space, especially when it comes to women. And so we just talk about all of that, why it's so important. And I think it was really insightful. And I honestly learned a lot too about just the supplement space, even when it comes to nutrition, because it's not an area that I am super familiar with. So I think that was a great conversation. She really shares her personal experiences as well, which I appreciate to see just how her own health experiences shaped the product that they developed. So I hope you enjoy this episode. If you don't listen through to the end, I just want to mention that Sophie's been so gracious to offer a 20% discount to listeners. So you can use the code MWW20 for 20% off your first purchase of Daily Basis. So be sure to check that out. That will also be linked in the show notes. Sophie, thank you so much for being with me today.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. So I'd love to start off with just hearing a little bit more about you, if you don't mind telling us. How did you come to start a supplement company? How did your background bring you to the point that you're at now?
Yeah, I think the funny thing is that I would say is, had you asked me probably even 5 years ago, or I guess told me 5 years ago that I would be building a supplement company, I probably would have laughed. And transparently, that's because I was not a supplement person. I was very much raised in a food forward household that was very much your nutrition comes from food. There was really solid education about healthy food. And I still very much believe that. We talk a lot about food first at Daily Basis and think that's really where the foundation comes from. But what I later realized in my 20s through some personal experience was that what I was getting through my food really wasn't enough. And it was really through a set of quite challenging health experiences. I'd been an athlete my whole life, and I'd always felt that I was at tip top shape from a health and nutrition perspective, and I really didn't need to think too hard about it. And after college in my early 20s, all of a sudden I started to get these really intense just symptoms, health symptoms all across the map. So I really started to experience this intense like chronic fatigue and gut issues. I had very clear skin. I was very fortunate my whole life, and I broke out in this like cystic acne all over my face and a bunch of symptoms that I now understand were intense signs of iron deficiency as well. So it was this onslaught of things. And I was like, what in the world is going on? Like, I'm focusing on getting the right nutrition. And I started seeing specialist after specialist. And it was very much, I think it's a common story. And it makes sense for specialists. I was going and seeing a dermatologist, and she was treating me for acne. And I was going to see the gut specialist and was getting treated for whatever my gut issue was. And so we were trying to treat all these symptoms, and I couldn't find anyone to really put all the pieces together. And so I was just getting sicker, and I was looking around at a lot of the women in my life, and I couldn't tell you the next woman who hasn't really complained about gut issues or severe PMS symptoms. And my sister was struggling with a lot of the same things at the same time and kind of being dismissed for some pretty intense symptoms that she was having as anxiety and other things. And so I knew that there was something going on. I'd felt before in my life very healthy, and I was like, something is going on. And so I became that test subject for myself, and I really dug in and did a lot of my own research. And what I discovered through the help of some really incredible health practitioners who did want to take a look at the whole picture was that I had been really suffering from a lot of nutrient deficiency. And that was in part, I am still figuring out why I have this inclination towards iron deficiency, which a lot of women do, but I've been suffering from severe iron deficiency, which I know is menstrual related, but there can also be other reasons. So I'm still on that journey. But also, there were things like probably some restrictive eating coming out of an athletics career, and just a whole combination of lifestyle things that had shifted that were causing this total turmoil. And this, it was just really these nutrient deficiencies coming together in different parts of my life that were wreaking havoc on my endocrine system. A lot of that really stemming from my gut issues. So it was this whole big learning during my 20s, unfortunately, having to go through that, which I think is not very uncommon. And and then fast forward a little while, I went and worked at Cliff Bar. I for about 5 years, and I was working in product innovation and development, working with consumers to figure out what they wanted and looking at the market and then bringing products to market, and really fell in love with the process of product development and innovation. And so it was the combination of those two factors, that like really that personal experience of knowing how easy it is, especially I would say men and women, but I would say that very often it's more common in women that they are experiencing these nutrient deficiencies. And I know that we'll jump into that a lot more, but it was kind of that personal experience mixed with the professional experience of building products that really brought me to the place that I am today with DailyBasis.
That's awesome. I love hearing the backstory and just it's unfortunate. I'm sorry that you had to experience that. And it really is sadly a very common experience to some degree to experience symptoms and have them be brushed off, especially as a woman. We have a lot more symptoms that are, okay, you're fine, your blood work looks fine and excused away. And so it's amazing that you were able to take that experience and really turn it into something that could help a lot of people and do great things. So that's amazing.
Yeah, what was wild was there was a really big resistance at the time to getting blood work done. And
Mhm.
I've found that has changed a lot in the last 5 to 10 years. It seems like that's, I don't know, you would know better than I do. It seems like the practitioners that I work with now are more willing to use that as a tool. But at the time, I was coming in with my fingernails were fully deteriorating. That is such an extreme sign of iron deficiency anemia. And I couldn't get a blood test done. And it was just that dismissive nature. But I feel very excited about where I think health is moving and really leveraging more tools. So, blood testing when it's necessary, along with then to inform supplementation and other health protocols. So, I hope that's the direction, because I think it tends to be a little bit more of a holistic view.
Yeah, I agree with you.
So,
I do think it's shifting, even primary care doctors or conventional doctors being a little bit more open-minded to different things. Obviously, as a functional medicine doctor, I'm totally in a different, like, I see functional medicine as the future of medicine. And I do think eventually, and I hope eventually, this is going to be conventional. This is going to be what everyone gets because I think it's really such a game changer when it comes to actually supporting people's health. But I agree with you. I think there's much more conversation about these things and people are more aware of them and there's more openness to them. So we're definitely heading in the right direction. Yeah.
yeah, it's good.
Yeah. With that, you alluded to it, there are big gaps in nutrition, the nutrition space, and even in our food system. What are some of those gaps, especially when it comes to women's health?
Yeah, so I think the thing that I've learned and understand is that it's definitely more pronounced when it comes to women on the whole when we're looking at nutrition deficiency. I think our society on the whole has a problem with nutrition deficiency, and I think there's a couple of reasons for that. A lot of it stems from just depleted nutrient density in our food. So that is definitely the soil that our crops are being grown in. The nutrients are very depleted in the soil just based on modern day farming practices. We're shipping food all the way around the world, which is it's it's how our modern society and globe works. But that also has a really big impact on the food density. The second you pick a crop from the ground, it starts to lose its nutrients, and so it's shipped across the world and then it sits in a fridge for several weeks. And I'm going to not use the stat because I'm going to butcher it, but it's something like an orange nowadays has, I don't know, a tenth of the amount of vitamin C in it than it did even 30 years ago. And so don't quote that. But it is significant. And so we are, as a society, on the whole, experiencing that. And then for women in particular, we really see that the menstrual cycle plays such a role in nutrient deficiency and the need for oftentimes for supplementation. And I will say always that not everybody needs supplements. There are people who do not struggle with nutrient absorption and they do have an incredibly nutrient dense diet and they will be okay. And I think that tends to be people who spend a good amount of time really making sure that's curated and they can shop locally, and they definitely have both the financial and geographic resources to shop in a way that's possible. A lot of people in this country, in the world, don't have that. So full stop, not everybody needs to take supplements, and it varies depending upon who you are. But for women in particular, because we have this monthly menstrual cycle and many of us are bleeding once a month, we're losing a lot of nutrients and there's blood and tissue once a month. And so if we're not changing our intake of specific nutrients, our bodies are trying to play catch up. And then depending upon if your body can play catch up, you might just be in a constant ongoing deficit. So that's one of the primary reasons. And then there's also things like the medications that we all take, including for women, hormonal birth control, can very often inhibit the body's ability to absorb nutrients. So that can contribute to that uphill battle, among other medications, including the ones that men take as well. But for women, a lot of the time that can be the case. I would say also in my specific experience, like diet and stress culture as well, we know that limiting calories can have a really huge impact. And when I say limiting calories, I mean being in an unhealthy, sustained deficit can have a really huge long-term impact on not just the nutrients at that time that you're deficient in, but that can really be compounding and impact your body's long-term ability to absorb nutrients as well. And same with stress. So that's, from what I understand and learn, is a really big part of it, along with just the complex nature of our monthly menstrual cycle, whether you're bleeding or not. If your hormones are fluctuating, our bodies do need additional specific nutrients at different times of the month to really function the way that they're designed to.
Thank you for outlining all that. And I
Yeah.
agree. I also don't know the statistic, but I've heard that also, even just from, like you said, the nutrients that are already grown in plants now compared to 10, 20 years ago. And then also between picking them and when they're being picked super early to then be shipped across the world, the amount of nutrients that are lost. We tend to think, oh, I'm eating an orange. That's such a great source of vitamin C. That was your example. And foods across the board, we think that, and you're right, there might not be nearly as many nutrients in there as we
Yeah.
think. So it can really make a big difference if we're buying
Yeah.
locally and organic and some of these other like more traditional farming practices versus more like modern farmed. Thank you for going through that. With that too, you alluded to some of the nutrients that women in particular might be deficient in, have a higher need for, especially in certain times of their cycle. If you don't mind maybe walking through some of those.
Yeah. So the ones that we focus a lot on, and there's a lot, and I can share more from a product standpoint, but when we think about that monthly menstrual bleed, we're really thinking about replenishing iron. We also talk a lot about magnesium, something that is lost and is also really important for the menstrual cycle in particular. And so we think about replenishing iron around the time of menstruation. Afterwards, you can take iron all the time, but making sure that you're really getting that replenishment. And then vitamin B, so like your B complex, also super critical. And women can tend to be deficient there. I know that not all women are deficient in folate. We also know that it is extremely important for women. And then going back to magnesium as well, there's, unfortunately, when you look at it, there is a lot of conversation and reason to believe and emerging research. It drives me crazy because as there is not a lot of longstanding research in this department, I think we're just starting to get to that place. But there's a lot of reason to believe when we think about the symptoms that women experience from PMS that it's very correlated with nutrient deficiency. So magnesium in particular is going to be very important for easing menstrual cramps. And so we like to really support the body in the second half of the phase, specifically with magnesium. So those are some of the examples just based and how they are important in different parts of the cycle.
Yeah. And I appreciate that because honestly, I'm not the ultimate expert in nutrition either, but I test people and I look at people and I talk with them about their symptoms all the time. And I see iron deficiency, vitamin D deficiency, magnesium deficiency so frequently, suboptimal B vitamins as well. And I see that correlation even in my own practice. PMS, painful periods, migraines, all sorts of things. And it can be really incredible to see it then when we reverse that and we really replete them and get them feeling better, like their symptoms just sometimes just disappear almost like magic when we just get them what they need. And so it's so powerful. So I
Yeah.
appreciate that, like the thought around it, and especially around different phases in our cycle to really pinpoint what we're needing and being able to give that like base layer of support beyond what people are getting from their diet, which we just said is probably not enough for most people. It's
Yeah.
not enough. So
Yeah. And I think to that point, one thing we talk a lot about is we've gotten to this point in, I think it's twofold, but we've gotten to this point in our society where we do so much overriding of our body and what it's asking for. And I think that a lot of us have actually, we don't even know what it's like to hear what our body is craving. And I think that especially when it comes to the difference between men and women and the needs, really, I think that there's a really important place for women to understand why there are cravings. I think it's been deemed, oh, I'm about to get my period, I'm having all these cravings, and the reality is you need more calories in the second half of your phase and your body is burning more calories. And so if you are craving things like sugar and salt, your body's really actually asking for calorie dense foods to make up for that. And I think that we've really been taught a healthy diet looks like the same healthy diet every single day. And that's just not how our bodies look. And it's a quite an extreme example, but I learned that the hard way in that when I was very anemic, iron deficient, I am now forgetting the name of it, but I was craving like iron rich things, not foods, but like dirt and anything that had iron in it, like a wet concrete. It wasn't like it just smelled good because it was raining. It was like I wanted to put my face in it. And that was such an intense craving. And I later learned it's like your body's very intuitive. It understands what it needs. And we've been confused by a lot of addictive ingredients. And I think that is complicated things. But when we really strip that away, our bodies do know what they need. And I think tapping into that is so important. And we talk a lot about intuition for women, but I think it's really it's on like a biological level. The body knows what it needs, and we need to learn to hear that and know what that message means.
couldn't agree with you more. And it's something that I talk with people a lot about because even again with my patients, they'll come to me, they're so used to having some external source tell them what's going on with their body. And so they're coming for me to me and give them my strategy and experience, of course. But a lot of what we're doing is let's listen to your body. What is your body saying? Let's decode your symptoms. Let's talk about what symptoms you're having around your cycle. Are you having these intense sugar cravings? And like they're thinking, oh my gosh, I can't, I just want to eat all this chocolate and that's bad because I'm gonna gain weight. Or there's all these like crossed messages in how they're interpreting those signals. In reality, like you said, it could just be their
Body telling them what it's needing. And so leaning into that can be so powerful in healing symptoms, just living in good balance with our body. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And of course, Pika being an extreme case of that. But again,
Right.
like it's like that. It's great to be aware of that. Okay, this is a warning signal that your body's really craving something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, an extreme one, an alarming one.
I'm sure that must have been really alarming.
You're like,
Yeah.
I don't know what this feeling is, but it makes me feel hungry for something I shouldn't eat.
Yeah. So interesting. With that, have there been any maybe surprises along the way with developing a supplement, with trying to approach this gap that you saw and really fill that in?
Yeah, there have definitely been surprises. I think that the thing that's been most surprising, the more that we dig in, and the Izzy and I, my partner and co-founder, is the deeper we get, the more that I see just the differences between what we need and what men generally need, and how the market and the healthcare system has not really supported those differences from every level, starting with resources for research, which we're hearing so much about, which is great, but it really stems from women not being included at that fundamental level from a research base. So now we have a lot of information now, but we don't have the years of research to really that our system requires and wants in order to make recommendations, which is great. Like, we want to have that rigor, but a lot of the conversations right now, which are so exciting, I think, about really bringing women's health to the forefront as something different and unique, it's so important. But I think that it's almost, there's spaces where it's lacking credibility because the research isn't there. And so I think we're in a really exciting time for that, because there's a lot more money being pushed into women's research, because I think that one of the beauties of brands, and that they hold so much responsibility, but one of the beauties is that they have influence, and there's a lot of female-led brands, and there's a lot of practitioners like yourself that are really invested and excited in pushing that conversation forward. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know if you call it surprising, but one of the things that we've really seen in the supplement space and really in the nutrition space is that you have two different places that you can go if you're a woman. So one of them is products that are designed for everyone, which means that they're not going to have a lot of the critical nutrients in them that women are commonly deficient in, because men are not commonly deficient in those, and men taking iron is often dangerous. So it's not going to include that. So you're not going to necessarily be getting what you need. And those products are also not going to have the flexibility in them to change so that you can get different nutrients at the different times of the month that you need them. So there's one category for women to go when we look at foundational nutrition and what's out there on the market if you're looking for something to supplement with. And then the second piece that we see for products that are very targeted towards women are very symptom focused. So you're going to see a lot of kick your cramps to the curb, and a lot of just super symptom focused. And I think the messaging there is that the pain you're feeling is normal. Here's a thing to go mask it, rather than what is deeper and what's going on, because what our body is doing on every month, especially when around the time of a period or before your period, there's a lot going on, and there will be discomfort based on that, depending upon who you are. But the levels of pain that women are suffering through is, from what I understand, is not normal. And so, like we were talking about, really listening to your body and understanding, what is that threshold? And it's hard to know, because I think we've been in a society that normalizes a lot of female pain and discomfort. And I think I was going into, when I was getting my period, like, this is gonna suck. And yeah, it is inconvenient. And I've gone through my fair share of years of extreme pain associated. But what I've learned now is that isn't how it needs to be. And that isn't necessarily normal. So I think some of those products just perpetuate that. And I think they're trying to help. But when you look at what's in them, it's usually a couple of vitamins. And maybe it's probably not going to do much. So we're really invested in looking at the more foundational level. But that's been something that's interesting to see, that's fallen out of just the way that I think women's nutrition, when you look at it within the health space, that's what we've seen that was interesting and surprising.
That's interesting. And I appreciate you bringing that up, because it's not something that I would have paid attention to before. But as you're saying that, I'm like, oh my gosh, you're absolutely right. And I've seen, all the supplements that are geared towards symptoms. And when I look at them, or I have people ask me about them, I'm like, it barely has anything in it. Like you said, it probably is not going to do anything. And it's great that there's more conversation about natural things to support those symptoms and to help women feel better, outside of just like ibuprofen or whatever would be recommended by maybe like their primary doctor. But yeah, it's really still leaving that huge gap of how can we actually support optimal health and feeling wonderful, and have that be the norm, rather than normalizing some symptoms like that are absolutely not normal, maybe common, but not necessarily normal. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what we're really aiming to do, is to give this foundational basis. You just talked about optimizations, and I think there is a place for optimizations when your health is at a really steady state. And I think that's where a lot of the supplement industry right now is telling people that they need X, Y, and Z supplement for these optimizations. And I think what a lot of women need is a foundation. And then if you do have a standard base of foundation, and then you work with a doctor to have those optimizations, maybe you're taking something one off that you're deficient in. And that's arguably a really great place to start anyway, is if you do have access to a really great care provider who can work with you one-on-one and do those very specific optimizations. But what we see on the whole is that so many women are deficient in a lot of those nutrients. You added zinc and vitamin D for sure, very common. So getting that foundational kind of like insurance policy, if you are not spending an immense amount of time on your diet or working one-on-one with a care provider to do that, it's a great place to start.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely agree. It is so interesting to see, yeah, that like some people are interested in their health and they're really trying to do a lot, and they're just being marketed all these different products that could be overkill, could be unnecessary, might be dangerous in the amounts that they're being given in. And yeah, like starting with the foundations, like you said, is always going to be the most important thing. And even the foundations of health in general, like talking about nutrition, movement, sleep, all of these important things, but then having this base layer of nutritional support there rather than just stocking up your cupboard and all these different random things that you don't really know for sure if they're right for you. Yeah. I think that's very smart.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Where, like, maybe on a personal level, more like the business side of it, like, where do you see maybe an opportunity, or is there like a big dream on the horizon as far as what you want to do coming up?
Yeah, yes, we are. Izzy and I, my partner, we also, a little backstory, we met at Cliff Bar, both in food, both wanted to go into women's health. And so we made this transition together and have continued this dream together. So when we think about the future, I chuckle because we are so in it right now. And I think about when Izzy and I first got together and started building the brand and the idea, and you're in dreamland at that point in time. And I think I've been a dreamer by nature, who also for a lot of reasons followed like quite a narrow path when I think about athletics and school and what should I do. And when I think now about starting my own business, there is a lot of that. What could this be? It feels very much like this unharnessing of a lot of what's been built up and what both myself and Izzy feel independently passionate about, but there's so much joint as well. So we just launched in March, and we're super excited to see some of the traction that we've gotten so far. And we've seen an awesome just resonance with women, especially when they hear about the idea. So we've been very much out in the community doing a bunch of events and chatting with people like yourselves. And it's this really cool energy around the brand when women are like, oh yeah. And a lot of people have been just exposed and way more interested in learning about their menstrual cycle and about their nutrition. And so it's really coming at this super fun time because people are like, oh, either I've heard of that and tell me more, and this is super cool, or people have gone the full journey and they're like mapping every bit of food that they're eating to when they are in their menstrual cycle. And but on the whole, there's been this really cool energy when women hear the idea and it kind of clicks and they're like, oh, that's awesome. And so that's just been very cool to see. And the dream, whether it's on the horizon or not, because it feels every day is like a blip when you're running a company. And then sometimes it just feels so long as well because you're like exhausted. But Izzy and I both really came into this and wanted to build a business because we had both had our own personal experiences with, as I had talked about, with my health struggles, and Izzy as well, very based in nutrient deficiency. We'd both been in nutrition at Cliff, in food and nutrition. And so we wanted to build a business for women in the nutrition space. But more than that, we really wanted to be a part of the larger conversation around pushing women's health forward. And so when we think about doing that, we think a lot about bringing experts to the table to talk about and to really educate on whatever their expertise is. And so women can find an expert that they resonate with and that they trust who can really talk about their health and what's going on. And so we look at this bigger picture of education and awareness around menstrual health and how nutrition plays a role in that, really to elevate women's ability to make their own decisions around their health on a daily basis. And we also see the longer term goal that we're putting a few little like nuggets in now is really some advocacy work. And so I think the place that Izzy and I both came into building this brand was a place of deep passion for women's health. I had done a little bit of work in that space previously. And so from all of the angles, we both want to elevate the conversation and really get involved in a lot of the advocacy work that's happening right now to increase funding for research and just really build it from the bottom up. So that's what we see on the further out horizon. Right now, we're really excited to just be sharing the product with the world and the messaging and hopefully the education, and women can approach that at whatever place, wherever they are in their journey.
Yeah, that's so amazing. And yeah, I can only imagine how much work has gone into it before even launching. And you are really so new on the market, so to speak, and like just launched. So it's amazing not to like rush through that because that's to be celebrated and is still a process, I'm sure. But that's amazing to really, I agree with you that I think it's so important that we change the conversation around women's health. That's my big passion as well. And getting more of that research and advocacy going too. So that's amazing. That can be part of the brand as well. And something that I feel like you see this with women's brands so much more than male-owned brands, that just like building a community and changing the conversation and educating. Like it's just, I love that can be part of the story also. It's not just a product that you're trying to sell to people. It's really like you're trying to help these people and support this conversation.
Yeah. And I was talking about it a little bit before, but before I got on this, before DailyBasis was any part of my life, I was doing what I think a lot of women do, is talking about what's going on with them, with their communities and with other women. And I think that's by nature. And maybe it's also because there's historically been a lack of, and currently a lack of resources. And so you turn to each other and you turn to the wisdom that somebody else has received. And so I think that it is in our nature to do that and to share and to build together and share experiences that might help somebody else. So it's really cool because that was part of our inspiration at the beginning, and to see that coming to life now is very cool. But you're right, it is, in starting a business, a combination of really scaling in and out between building and then looking up and being like, are we headed in the right direction? Is this the dream direction? And then back in and build. So it is the combination of trying to remember to celebrate the day-to-day wins and also looking up every once in a while and making sure that you're still headed towards that goal and that bigger dream.
Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing. Yeah. Any tips that you want to share today, just for women just who are maybe just trying to support their health overall, who are trying to move in that right direction to, if they are having symptoms, maybe resolve symptoms or just feel their best?
Yeah. I would say that from personal experience and kind of being forced into that, as much as you can, and we were just talking about this, getting to know your own body is so important, because so much of, like you were saying, the messaging is one direction, like should inwards. And I think that as women, we have experienced that in a lot of different ways. But finding a way, whether that's through just your own discovery or if that is working with somebody to figure out that voice, and then figuring out how you can follow that and honor that through food and rest and Exercise, I think, really is one of the most important things. And whether you have a regular cycle or not, I think that you can do that. And that's a huge unlock for your health ongoing, because then you can start to realize what's normal for me and what's not normal. And I think that's a foundation when it comes to health, is what is your baseline. And so understanding what that is for you is so important. So that would be one of them. And I think a lot of that, maybe another one is just that it's very cliche, but perfection totally is the, what do they say? Perfection is the death of joy, or that's probably not it, but it's that sentiment. And I think that's what we talk about too a lot, is you are in dangerous territory when you are talking about make sure you get the right thing at the right time of the month. And it just becomes very regimented and can actually exacerbate some of the issues that are around food and health. And so I really like to keep in mind that it's not about perfection. It's about remembering that you're human. And the beauty of it is that our bodies are constantly changing. And so even, yes, are our bodies changing every day of the month? Yes, they're also changing every day of the year through all of the cycles that we go through in life. So puberty and all the way through to postmenopause. And so remembering that it's always going to change, and to continue to give yourself a lot of grace in that, even when you are trying to give yourself the right things at the right time, also give yourself a little bit of grace.
Yeah, such a great reminder, because I always have to go back to, because sometimes I'll talk about cycle syncing or how to listen to your body. And then someone's, but I'm doing this at this point and it's not working. And I'm like, oh, thank you for that reminder that actually it's not like this is a template, but it's really listening to your body. And every time expecting it to be like, oh, luteal phase is going to look like this and follicular phase is
Yep.
going to look like this, because there are those big seasons of life and other things that are impacting how you feel. So yeah, just being, I don't know, staying open and curious and loving towards your body is important. And there really is no perfection at all.
Yeah.
And it's a trap too
Yeah.
with people who like, as a functional medicine practitioner, I have fallen into people who are going into this. They're like, oh, optimal health means perfect health. No, there really is no perfection. We're human beings. We're not these perfect creations. We're imperfect. We're spontaneous. We're always changing. So yeah, not getting caught in that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when I think about the health transition that I had, there were so many things happening at that time. I try to remind myself that I also made some very big, like I was very sick, and then it was a long journey to get better. And a really big part of that was I moved to a different city, and a lot of that, and it improved my health tremendously. The habits in the new place I was in, I went from really a lot of punishing exercise to just a lot more walking, because that's what was available where I was. And I think a really big piece of that was letting go of a lot of the, I don't know, I just had a stronghold. I'd been an athlete and swam in college, and so much of my being was about like the craft of perfecting your body for sport. And so when that went away, it was a really hard thing to let go of, and it was scary. And so it was a long several years of just saying that's an old chapter and you're not going to be able to maintain that. And so while I was working through a lot of the hormonal issues and the iron deficiency and all of those pieces, I was also doing a lot of work on my mental health and trying to transition out of that. And when I think back on it and I talk about that story, it was a combination. It was also a letting go of a lot of that need to control that made a big difference. And it's also so infuriating when you are sick and somebody tells you to let go of that control. You're like, what does that mean? How do I do that? So it's such a personal journey and experience. But I do try to remember while we're working on this that there is no perfection. Nobody's the same. Nobody's cycle syncing perfectly. And if they are, they should probably not stop cycle syncing, but they should give themselves a day to breathe.
Yeah.
So I try to remember that too.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that story. I think that is something it's so hard to go through. And when you're having to let go of a personality in a sense, like you think of as who you are and what you do, and having to let go and change that is so hard. It's like changing
Yeah.
everything about you. It can feel like taking the ground coming out from under you, basically.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I think so many of us experience that in one way or another at some point in life, whether it have to be that like moving locations, having a health
Mhm.
experience where they can't do the same thing, especially when I work with people with fertility. It's sometimes they have to feel like they're undoing everything to let go of stress and everything. It's just that can be such a hard process. But there is
Yeah.
a lot of beauty and power in letting go of something when it isn't serving you anymore. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That
It's
worked.
incredible. And it's also, I don't know, I think about seeing your practice and now looking back on myself. Gosh, that was like 10 plus years ago that journey started, and how badly I wish I would have had a partner to go through that with, because those changes can feel very much like you said, I don't know, is this making a difference? And I think having somebody to partner with like you do in your practice is just it's such a, I don't know, special thing that we don't very often don't have access to. So
Mm.
I think that's really great what you're doing. And I hope that we continue to see more of you in the world.
Thank you. Yeah. There are more and more
So
functional medicine doctors every year. So
yeah.
it should be moving that direction. But yeah. Yeah. It's hard because still, even when we know it's a resource, it can feel so hard to know when is the point where you need help. And in reality,
Hmm.
there's no point. There's no magic point. It's really just everyone deserves support. And it's if you're at a place where you're struggling and not knowing exactly what to do, it can be so helpful to
Yeah.
partner together. And I have a lot of strategy that I can share with people. And I love doing that. So it's great both ways.
Yeah. Cool. So
Awesome.
cool.
Anything else you want to share before we wrap up?
Shared. Oh, I shared a lot. I think that let's see, what would I want to share? I would want to share that if you're thinking about your health and whether you have a concern or not a concern, I think there's just a lot to dive in. And like I said before, exploring that realm and really getting to know yourself is a wonderful thing. And as you were just saying with your practice, I think that there's always a place to, I don't know, explore that and get to know yourself and yeah, improve your health no matter what that looks like.
Yeah.
So I think it's a great personal journey.
Yeah.
So
Amazing. I really appreciate you and Izzy for doing what you do. And again, taking your inspiration and seeing that huge gap and not just moving on with your life, but really deciding to make this your passion project and your business and creating Daily Basis. I think even I don't remember now exactly how it was that I came to know about you guys, but I was really excited right off the bat just because I think it is such a big gap that we need more basic support for women to just feel their best in daily life. And like you said, without it having to be symptom related, without having to feel like something is wrong first, really just feeling most supported in their well-being right off the bat. So I really appreciate
yeah,
you bringing this
yeah,
about, and again, really supporting the conversation with education and everything. So I will continue to be rallying for you guys and supporting the product because I think it is really a great product that you've created. And so, of course, we'll link in the show notes to show people where they can find you and try it out for themselves. And I
great.
think we have a discount code as well to offer people today. Is that right?
Yes, yes. I believe now I'm forgetting
I think it's
what I gave.
MWW 20
20
for 20%.
MWW 20 for
Yeah.
20% off.
Yeah.
You
And
got it.
I'll link that in there. Okay, perfect. Yeah. And I appreciate you sharing the extra discount for listeners so they can try it. Because again, I think it's an amazing product. I think it can be really helpful to just easily integrate into anyone's life and support their health. Yeah. I'm excited for people to try
Yeah,
it.
thank you. And if anybody has any questions or you want to get in touch with us, please do. You can find us at our website. I know you'll link that dailybasislife.com, and we're always happy to answer questions and continue the conversation. I think that is probably the last thing that I would say actually is if you feel compelled to talk about it and talk about your experience, I think it helps everyone around you when we do that.
Yeah, I agree.
So
Thank you so much for
cool.
being here again.
Thanks, Miranda. Really appreciate it.